Okay, so we're going to be exploring and visualizing with the investigative question, are cereals healthy? And the first thing that I notice is that this is a question about cereals in the aggregate. So it's not enough to find a cereal or two which are healthy or are not healthy. We need to be looking for patterns and trends across all cereals. And that's where the visualization comes in. It lets us kind of look at a ton of data in human form. So the first thing that I want to do, I want to come up here, I want to switch it over to the case table view of the data set. And I just want to spend a moment to look through the different attributes that are available and decide what might be helpful. Because not all of them will be. You can see company here, shelf location. Those are not going to help me make arguments about whether cereal is healthy or not. But on the other hand, calories, okay, calories, how much fuel you get from your food, that's absolutely going to be related to nutrition. So let's keep looking through these, see what we find. There's serving size. Okay, here we go. And you can see there's a huge array of information about the nutritional information on cereals. This is like what you get on the box on the side of the cereal. So that's going to be some of the attributes that I really care about. But first, let's go back to the one that jumped out at me first. Let's jump out to calories. And again, I'm not looking at the individual data values for calories. I want to look at all of them and see if there are any kind of patterns. So I'm going to click and drag and bring it over to my x-axis. And Kodak will visualize the distribution of calories. I can use this ruler icon to add a box plot. And okay, this is a pretty symmetric distribution. You can see there's a large concentration around 150 calories. But actually what pops out to me is some of these ones on the very far outside. We have over here at 60 calories, the Harris Teeter Fiber Whey cereal. And on the far side, all the way over here, it's 320 calories for the bare naked granola. So that means that per serving of cereal, you have anywhere between 60 and 320 calories. And that's going to make it very hard to directly compare those cereals. If we're looking at, say, the sugar content of these two cereals, it'll mean a very different thing based on the relative calories in the single serving. I have over here the serving size. I want to compare that and see if we have a similar one. All right, this one's interesting. You can see there's a huge concentration at a serving size of 1 cup. That perhaps is an industry standard, but again, there's large variation, right? We have values all the way down here at 0.12 cups, all the way up to here to 1.75 cups. So over 10 times as large a serving size as some of these cereals. So that really kind of leads credence to my belief that it's going to be relative, the information we find. So let's go back to calories. And I want to see if some of these really basic nutritional aspects are correlated to calories. So what I can do is I can come here and I grab total fat in grams and drop it on the y-axis. And we can see, okay, maybe a slight upward trend, but pretty ambiguous other than these two at the top here. What about total sugars? If we drop that in place, again, it's perhaps a light trend upwards. And I'm saying that because in the top left corner here, you can see that there's absolutely no values. And in the bottom right, again, there's a large blank space other than a couple of what might be these outliers. There's a large blank space. So it seems like there's a positive upward trend, but not a very strong one. Like there's a lot of variation. And we can check that. I can actually go ahead and grab total sugars, bring it down to my x-axis, click on calories and remove it completely to look at just the distribution of total sugars. Again, I'm going to add a box plot to help me look at this. And I can see this supports my thought that there's a lot of variation here. You know, while there's a large concentration at 12 total sugars, there's also these spikes at 5, and especially at 0 and 1. If this were a symmetric distribution, we would expect there to be almost no cereals with 0 or 1 gram of total sugar. But in fact, there's many that kind of buck this trend. Okay, and I just saw that over here in the case table view, there's the added sugars, and that might be even better than total sugars, because total sugars is going to include healthy sugars, right? Fruits are going to include total sugar, but they're not going to have much added sugar. So let's see if this has a similar trend. Okay, and what I observed is perhaps even more pronounced. Again, we have this mode at 12 grams of sugar, a really high peak here, but there's even more cereals which have 0 grams of added sugar. And on the flip side, okay, we saw that some of the cereals had 20 grams of total sugars, and indeed, some of those cereals, every single gram of total sugar was an added sugar. And I'm not a nutritionist, but I'm pretty sure that added sugar is not healthy. So there's a large amount of variation in how much sugar the cereal is going to. Okay, so one thing that comes to mind is that cereal is a grain, and when I think of a grain, I think of it as having sugar and I think of it as having fiber. We just looked at sugar. Let's look at fiber and see what that distribution is like. I'm expecting something very similar because it's a grain. Oh, hey, but this is not similar. I was expecting kind of the inverse of total sugars, but dietary fiber actually seems a lot more consistent, right? We have this very large concentration around 2 grams of dietary fiber and 3 grams of dietary fiber. Yeah, it's got a huge right skew, right? So we have some that are all the way up here at 17 and 18. But for the most part, it looks like fiber is a lot more concentrated than sugar is. I expected it to have that concentration at high and low values like the sugar. So if I'm trying to compare the amount of sugar and the amount of fiber, we can just go ahead and graph them against each other and see what that looks like. So let's leave dietary fiber on the x-axis and take added sugars and bring it to the y-axis and see if they are related. Okay, they do not seem to be related. Okay, perhaps there's a slight downward trend, right? There is information in the bottom left corner, but there's this large triangle in the top right corner that's saying that there's no cereals that have high dietary fiber and high added sugar. So perhaps it's a slight downward trend, but it does not look like a strong correlation. If we add a line of best fit, yeah, it's almost horizontal, right? It's downward like I thought, but the R squared value is 0.012. So barely a correlation at all. And that is kind of shocking to me, but it leads credence to my earlier observation that added sugar has a lot of variation. Because to me, a healthy cereal might be one which has high fiber and low sugar. So those would be ones that are far right on the x-axis and far low on the y-axis. But there's only this one cereal out of the very many that we've graphed that are in that area. And more problematically, regardless of what the fiber is, there are a ton of cereals which are in the top half of our graph. There's a ton of cereals which have, even if they have a large amount of fiber, like this Kellogg's Oat Bran, it might also have a ton of added sugar, which is not healthy for you. So we can't yet say whether cereal is healthy or not, but we can say at this point that the amount of added sugar in cereals, which is not a healthy thing, has a large amount of variation.